Hey everybody, welcome back to Project 25. This is going to be part 2. In part 1, you should have seen already that we made the left hand and the right hand cheek for the transition offset that is used mainly as a trunk line starter. We don't have the cheeks quite finished, so we can make the measurements of the heel throat combinations on the top and bottom there. And after that, then we'll put the trunk line starter on here and get these bent to the proper style that they need to be. So let's jump into what the project's supposed to look like. There was our cheek that we made from the previous. Now we're on to the heel throat combination pattern, or you can maybe refer to it as the cheek, depending on how you want to look at the part. The big thing with these, and I probably forgot to mention this on the last project, but the danger in this one here is it's not, as we've been going through these, standard 8-inch. Every project up to this point has basically been 8 inches in width. Now this one here changes. It is going to be a 10-inch in width with a 7/8 and 7/8 take up for the lock former. Again, most of them lock formers having an inch take up, but this one has a 7/8. So that's something we need to be aware of for both the top and the bottom on those cheeks there. So with that being said, let's get into measuring these things out and see what we can come up with. So the easiest way that I found on these to measure the distance of these heel throat combination parts here is to, again, just simply take a piece of sheet metal, some scrap that's laying over there in the bin, and then lay that out there from one end of the project, work that around all the way to the other, and then maybe double check it. Make sure you got it right, because I think I moved it. And then once you get to that end, take your 10 snips, and I don't know if you can see that or not, but I turn it around. Take your 10 snips, and then pull that in and just cut that off right where it belongs. Alright, and then check that length, verify it on the other part to make certain they're the same, which they should be if you got everything edged properly to the right dimension. They should come out to the proper distance, and that one does just fine there. Okay, so then we'll set that one aside, and then we'll measure the other section, the top, if I can get a hold of it. So the same thing, just lining up your edges there, running them through. Until they come out just the way they need to be. And again, verify with the other project, the other part, and the other cheek that these are the same length. And that comes out pretty nicely there. Okay, the next thing to do then is to get some actual dimensions of these so we know how long to cut our parts. We know these are over 8 inches, so we can actually build these as 2 separate parts versus most projects we had to build them as a combination, but this is nice. We don't have to really worry about it too much. So on the bottom, it looks like we're looking at about 13 3/4 there in that length. In the top, what do I got here? The top is going to end up 13 inches right on the button there. So 13 3/4 and 13 inches. Might pay to write them numbers on the piece of metal if you got a Sharpie or something. 13 3/4 down here, and this one up here was 13 inches. I know there's a lot of numbers on there. So now that we got those dimensions figured out, we've got to figure out the width. So when we put the left and the right hand cheek on there, we got that distance figured out. So let's go to our plan. These are basically 2 of the same drawings, very, very similar, just they're different lengths that we've got here, our 13 and our 13 3/4 inch sections there. 10 inches is our final duct dimension, plus the 7/8 and 7/8 for our take-up of this lock form machine. Most are an inch. So most people would have a 12-inch chunk of material here for most lock formers, but ours is not. Ours takes 10 and 7/8 and 7/8, which will give me 11 and 3/4 on that dimension. Now, if you recall from the previous project, when I started drawing these things, I moved them up. That way I could make my marks when we did the arc bisecting and everything here to find, I think it was 0.13 and 17 and everything at the bottom. I had a 12-inch drop-off on there, so that drop-off is what I'm going to actually use, and I got it right here. I picked it up from the shear over there. The 12-inch cutoff, yep, it was 0.17 on each of those, and I left it the width of the sheet. So we can use that to make the top and bottom heel throat combinations. So again, looking for the side width, the final duct dimension to be 10 inches plus 7/8 and 7/8. I've got to cut this down to 11 and 3/4. So I'm going to take my tape measure here and I'm going to mark that at 11 and 3/4. And all I'll have is a 1/4 inch of drop. Mark that over here as well. Actually, I want to use a factory edge, so I'm going to turn it around this direction. Keep that factory edge. 11 and 3/4. I think I cut it pretty straight, but there's nothing better than a factory edge, that's for sure. Let's mark that here as well, the 11 and 3/4. And let's go cut that. Okay, back here at the bench then, we're going to lay out the dimension lines for the lock form machine, which is a 7/8 take up for this one. Again, most of an inch, so I'm just going to run for ours a 7/8 line all the way down both sides of the sheet there. There will be a little bit of waste in the middle because I'm building basically the top and the bottom out of one sheet here. Okay, so here was the bottom, if I'm not mistaken. That was the 13 and 3/4 dimension. So I'm going to take that, line it up there, and then we'll get our dimension and get that squared across there. So you'll notice the combination square, the 12 inch is too short, so you'll have to flip it and do it from both sides. Or you can use a framing square if there's one available. That will work as well. And that'll tell you right there how square the sheet is if they line right up on both sides, which this one did pretty good. So there will be the base. Now let's figure out our length for our top section. Also, if you want, you can verify your length there, which that seems pretty good. And then you can take the other one, line it up on the edge, and do the same procedure there on your distance. And square that in there as well, across the sheet. That one came out as well. Alright, so we can go up, because these two are both over 8 inches, they will run through the lock form machine. So we can go up now and we can cut them and finish fabricating the rest of that as we go, because we have our 13 and 3/4 dimension, and on this side should be our 13 inches. So let's cut this in the shear and then we'll finish laying out our fabrication marks. Alright, to finish fabricating these heel throat combinations here, we've already got our 7/8 lock form lines down each side. But what we don't have is we notice we need a notch for the 3/4 section on the left of this panel, and we've got to do a little bit of design layout here for that that cleat that we have to build, or that notched area for the takeoff of the duct. So we need a 3/4 inch section, an inch section, and another inch section. So when we put it in the leaf break over there, we'll be able to bend them properly. So the first couple marks are fairly easy. 3/4 inch on each side. Go to your scribe. We've actually got a 3/4 inch mark from the previous project there, and I'm going to flip it over and I'm going to do the same on this other side. And then we just got to measure the inch sections from there on. So 3/4 inch mark. So I don't care how you do it, you know, 1 3/4 is your first inch, and then you got your 2 3/4 is your second there. You can verify that by pulling it out if you need to. 12 to 13, 13 to 14, obviously, or whatever, takes up your inch. Same on the bottom, 1 3/4 and 2 3/4. And then with the square, we'll square them across. Another thing you can do is just simply use the square, because that will give you a 1 inch take up as well. And I don't know if you can see that, there's the mark in there. That's that 1 inch width of the square. We run them across there. Okay, so the left one is just about ready to be notched. The way it looks out, the left hand side there is just simply 2 3/4 inch notch chunks out of there. Simple enough. And the right hand side, just like in the previous project, we can do this a couple different ways. We can make them square, or we can set them back a couple degrees. I'll probably do one of each again so you can see the difference. This one will set back just a couple degrees on there, so there's a little relief. And then same on that side, just a little bit. Just trying to make each side look consistent with one another there. Okay, the bottom section is laid out there then, and it is ready to be formed up and fabricated. So there it is. So that's going to fit right there after we get that run through the lock former. So let's go ahead and do the top. The top is on the next page, and that's going to look like this. I got it upside down because it is going to be backwards. To an extent. Well, it's kind of on the top, but yeah, I'll flip it over. Flip it over and we'll do the same thing here. We'll make them just almost identical to one another. The width and everything's already configured. So again, just like before, 3/4 inch notch on the left. Both of them right on that 7/8 mark. And then on here, we've got to put the 3/4 inch dimension down there. This sheet already had that 3/4 inch dimension from the previous project on that side. And here, that's how I could cut them. So there's the 3/4 inch distance. And then, again with my ruler, we need a 1 inch, 3/4, 1 inch, and 1 inch setback. So I've got my 3/4 inch line there. I'll use my ruler, being that it's 1 inch in width. Do the same deal there. And because I didn't measure that right away, I'll just pull a tape measure on it and verify that it came out to 2 3/4, which it did. Take my 10 snips. This time I will run that perfectly square. I would probably recommend putting a small relief on that, but I'll let you decide when we get it together. I'll point it out. All right, we got the top section ready to go then. So let's go ahead and run them through the lock former next. Just like any other project, this one's lines up. So let's take it up there and do it. Okay, here we are back at the bench. You'll notice that as we cut them, this one over here we cut square, how that ran through the lock former with those edges in the lock form, and how we got this one set back or relief here. You can decide in a little bit which one you think is better. So the next thing I want to do then is, let's see, this is my shorter one, so this is the 13-inch section. Noticing that we need to have our sides set up there, how we've got our internal curl right here. So this is going to be an internal, and then we've got our external out here. It's going to stop about somewhere in this area with that one. So I've got that one marked, and then I'm going to flip it over and I'm going to do the same thing where I've got an external roll from this distance right on up here till about this area somewhere, and it's a really tight one, and then this one's a real gradual roll that fits in there. So I got basically some indications on where to start and stop those rolls. So we'll do that next. Let's throw it in there. Put our spacers in so we don't forget that. They don't have to be too long. They just got to be long enough to cover the lock form where that's going to stretch out. So that'll work for that one. In this other unit, we'll get that in there as well. And with that, let's take our sample and our parts over to the roll former. Okay, back here at the bench, there's one last thing that we need to do with regards to fabricating these, finishing up these cheeks and these heels, and that is to get the bend on for the takeoff. And if we look, let's see, not there. If we look on here, we'll notice that it looks like it's bent out at a 90 degree here, and we gotta kind of take that into account. They didn't do a very good job drawing that, so I'm going to kind of take over with the video to demonstrate how this is going to go on there. What we're going to do, take our spacers out for a second here. what we're going to do with this takeoff on this inch, and this 3/4 inch bend here is the first one is going to be bent out to a 90 out. The second one is going to be bent back in on itself, and then the 3/4 is going to be kicked out to a 90 degree. So we need to transfer a couple marks to the outside, but not such a tremendous amount that you'll be able to see it. So I'm just going to run these points right around the corner, you know, with a pin or something really small, and you can see the first one. It sits right there on the edge, and that'll be hidden a little later there with that. So that's transferred across, and it comes right out on that edge, so we don't really have to do much more with that one. This one is going to be bent in, so that's exposed. We don't have to mark that one, but this other one is going to be bent out, so we do have to transfer that 3/4 inch mark across there. So you can do that a couple different ways. You can do it with a pin, or if you're really careful, right on the edge, you can put a small little dimple in there without going through the edge of the sheet. And the dimple won't matter because that'll actually be notched out later on when we put that into the product there. So let's go ahead and put this in the brake next, and let's bend them up to where they need to be. So first things first is all the way in to the third line, 1, 2, 3. So 3/4 inch and inch all the way in there. Line them up to our points. And we're going to bend that up to a 90 degree. And that's going to be bent out to a 90 degree as well. Then we're going to flip it over, and we're going to go to mark number 2, so 1 3/4 from the edge there. And this one is going to get bent back on itself. So that one's going to be pulled up all the way till it stops. Now before I close that down, I've got to get this set up to get my 3/8 set to a 90. So I'm going to, before I get that all the way down there, I'm going to push that in there. And actually, I probably shouldn't have gone quite all the way over, but the metal's small enough here, it'll stretch with no problem. The last one gets bent to a 90 from this plane right here. So we're going to stop with that right there, and then we're going to finish it off by flipping it in the brake and then closing that ledge down on itself there. Then what we're going to do later on is we're going to run a notch through here, not right away, and we're going to notch this over the trash can so we don't make a mess over the floor. But we're going to take this and we're going to notch this every inch or so. Some people like to be smaller, some people like to be further apart, depending on the preference of whatever they like. And then that's going to get slipped into a duct. Say if this was the edge of a plenum, that's going to get sandwiched, and you'll reach in and bend them over, and that fitting will not come off there. So let's do the same to these other 3 parts, part including the 2 cheeks and the last throat and heel combination. So again, really the only marks that we have to transfer over, this one should be taken care of. It'd be this outermost 3/4 inch. So we'll just put a small divot right in the edge there where it's going to make little or no difference where they'll be cut off later on. And then we'll slip that in. If you notice these 2 3/4 inch marks here, they transfer right over to the edge where we notched it previously. So again, same thing. And now we'll work with the cheeks. Again, with the cheeks, the only marks we really need are the 3/4 inch mark transferred out. Couple other things that we have to worry about on these cheeks is on these edges here where the lock form is, as you'll see here in a second, you'll notice they're going to get in the road of the apron to bend them. So we're just going to kind of flatten one side out here just a little bit, something like that. And then the other side we're going to slip beyond and slip by the apron. So taking into account where the edge is, right there. Get them lined up. And then again, up to a 90. Flip it over. Look at where it came out on your mark, how well that did, which wasn't too bad. Go to the next mark. Kind of see in the shadow there. This one gets nearly all the way over, maybe just a 1/4 inch from. Finish that 3/4 inch to a 90. 90 from that back plane there. And then finish closing them down. And then just take a little pliers and make the repair on the easy edger. And then the last one here. And there we've got it. We've got the left hand cheek, the right hand cheek. We've got the heel throat for the top and the heel and throat for the bottom there, all fit and ready to be assembled. So that's going to wrap it up on this one. I got to just do a couple little things here yet. Straighten these up. The other one should be done. And this project is ready to be assembled. So thanks for watching. We'll catch you on the next one. Later.